if Tor is successful, the internet would be built by its heart, right? Like the elements that Tor carries, which is community, which is decentralization. Instead of having everything focused on a few small companies, would be more distributed. I come from the free software world, so I'm always excited with, and I have lived at moments in my life where I saw I could touch it. I could touch at the moment where the source code would be shared and multiple areas of society would benefit from it. Collaboration allows amazing innovation. We are here today because of free software. If it wasn't for that, we would not be here today.
That's Isabela Fernandes, head of the Tor Project, describing the beautiful promise of collaboration, community, and innovation that is instilled in the free software world, and the important role it plays as we look forward to that better future we're always talking about on this show. I'm Cindy Cohn, the executive director of the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
And I'm Jason Kelley, EFF's activism director. This is our podcast series, How to Fix the Internet.
The idea behind this show is that we're trying to make our digital lives better. You know, a big part of our job at EFF is to envision all the ways that things can go wrong online, and then, of course, jumping into the action to help when things then do go wrong. But this show is about optimism, hope, and solutions. We want to share visions of what it looks like when we start to get it right.
And our guest today is someone whose vision of getting it right is stronger than most.
Isabela Fernandes has been an important presence in the security and free software communities for a really long time now. She's been the executive director at the Tor Project since 2018, and before that, she was a product manager there. And I'm happy to say that when I was on the board of the Tor Project, I was one of the board members that strongly recommended Isa for the executive director role. She was and continues to be not only a brilliant mind, but a skilled executor, with the Tor Project providing a model for an open source tool that works, is trusted, and literally saves lives around the world. We are so thrilled to have her here. Welcome, Isa.
Hi, thank you.
We're really excited to talk to you. And I wanted to start, if I could, with some basics. I think a lot of our audience, has heard of Tor. Maybe they know what the Tor browser is. But some of these things pop up, and I think, some people don't know the difference between a torrent and a Tor browser and like what the Tor project actually works on. So what is the Tor project? What are the tools that you're sort of responsible for creating and maintaining there?
So the Tor Project is actually a nonprofit, and our mission is to advance human rights through the technology that we built, right? So Tor is very similar to a VPN, but much better. We have a decentralized network that is run by volunteers that whenever you are making a connection to a service or website, our network will route you through 3 servers and is going to encrypt it every step of the way. And because of this architecture, it's not centralized on anyone or any entity. It's completely decentralized to thousands of servers around the world. And we also have the Tor browser, which is a fork of Firefox. And what the Tor browser does, besides making it easier for you to connect to the Tor network, it protects your privacy on the device level. So it blocks third-party cookies. It also protects you against fingerprinting, tracking, and other ways that your device identity can leak.
Okay, so just to dig in and make sure I understand, if I'm on a VPN, I'm, basically connecting to another server and all of my connections are going through that. And usually I can pick where they are from a short list of, potential servers and cities and countries. But with Tor, I don't choose where I'm going or what those 3 connections are, but it adds that extra layer of protection because 3 is better than 1. But why is that? I'm just I wonder for the audience who might not know why 3, why not 5, or why not 2?
Right. So 3 mainly because it works like this, right? The first server will know who you are because you're connecting to Tor.
Sure. Okay.
But it does not know what you were requesting. The middle one does not know who you are and have no idea about what you are requesting. And the exit one, the third one, only knows that someone on the internet is requesting to open a website.
Got it.
So that count is great because if it was only 2, that information, you will still have some way to discover it and to understand where the information is coming from and where it is going. So 3, it is indeed a sweet number for you to have the level of privacy that we want without building more latency to the connection.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask one more question about the technical aspect. Over the last decade plus, most of the web has become encrypted. The HTTP level has become HTTPS, and that's something that EFF has worked on with our certbot project and Let's Encrypt. And if I'm not super familiar with the difference between, how HTTPS is encrypted versus what Tor is doing, why do I still need to use Tor? How is it protecting my privacy if quote unquote the web is already encrypted?
Let's give this example, right? Like HTTPS would be encrypting your connection to the website. So when you type your username or password, that information is encrypted. However, the server who is watching still would know who you are and where you're coming from. With Tor, you gain that other layer of protection, right? Like nobody would know who you are and what you are requesting except for the website. So it protects you from outside watchers who might be surveilling your connection. Also protects you from other tracking mechanisms on the internet. So the ideal scenario is for you to use both, right? Like it's for you to not only use Tor, but make sure that you're connected to a website that has HTTPS as well.
Wow. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm getting tech support from the literal executive director of the Tor Project. But I think a lot of people, that come to us at EFF for privacy or security recommendations really do not understand some of these, somewhat basic things that you're describing about the difference between proxies and encrypted sites and VPNs and Tor. And I think it's just really important for people to know how these different tools work because they're always, different tools function for different purposes, right?
Yeah. And it's, security is hard. It actually requires, it would be great if there was a one size fits all security. And I think that if you look at all the pieces that Tor's building, they're moving towards that. I want us to kind of talk a little bit more about the why of Tor, because we've really outlined the how of Tor. And I want to give you a chance to kind of debunk one of the arguments that we hear all the time at EFF, which is, why do people need all this security if you're not doing anything wrong? Why should you worry? Or is it all just hopeless and shouldn't I just give up? But let's start with the first one. And I know that you've done a lot of work at Tor trying to really think hard about who needs these tools, who uses these tools in a way that's privacy protective. So I wonder if you could outline a little bit of kind of what you guys know about who uses Tor and why.
There is a spectrum. And I always like to give examples from the two sides of this spectrum. Like we collect a lot of anonymous stories from users. And let's call this one Brian. So we have Brian. He's a father and he has 2 teenager kids at home. And, as teenagers, they have questions about everything, right? Like about sex, gender, drugs, everything. So he recommends his kids to use Tor when they're searching for those topics on the internet. And sometimes he needs to search some topics himself, like the kids bring a topic that he had no idea what it's about. So they use Tor to make sure that those searches does not follow those teenager kids for the rest of their lives. Right? Like it's not tagged to them for the rest of their life. So he recommends his kids to use Tor. And then you have on the other side of the spectrum, let's call her Carolina. Carolina is a woman in Uganda. She's a lesbian. And in Uganda, you can face criminal charges for that. So Carolina just wants to have a normal social online life. And because it's so dangerous in Uganda for her, she really needs to make sure that she's protected and anonymous online when she's interacting with her friends or just looking for topics that is related to her lifestyle. So she used Tor to be safe online, to just have a normal social life on the internet. We did a research which I thought was very interesting. We put a question on our browser. It was anonymous and anyone could answer. And we had almost 55,000 people answering that question, and was how often you use Tor, the Tor browser. And actually more than half of that said that they use a few times a day or a few times a week. And that for me says a lot, right? Like it's for those moments where you're like, okay, this I will want to do on Tor. I don't want the rest of the internet to collect this information and store it and attach that to my behavior profile. And that for me, it's what is important, right? Like if people may think that everything is lost and there is no reason to do that. And I think the other way around. I think it is possible for you to create black spots about your behavior online. And that's where tools like Tor can allows you to do, right? Like you can create some black spots about you on the internet that protects your privacy. I think today people do care a lot about the privacy. And one example about which is related to privacy that I always bring to people, it's how dangerous it is to compare the need and the right to be anonymous with the need to hide something that you don't want others to know or some illegal activity, because anonymity is actually one of the pillars of our democracy. Your vote is anonymous for a reason. So for you to exercise your citizen rights, you need to have privacy.
Yep, I think that's exactly right. And I also think we're living in times when things are moving so fast about who's at risk and who's not at risk, that a lot of people are waking up to the fact that just because you might not need privacy in one zone of your life or in one time that we're living in doesn't mean that that can't change really quickly. And having the tools available and ready and working is one of the things that we can do, we meaning people in tech, to make sure that as times change, people have the tools that they need to stay safe and to stay protected and to organize, opposition, to organize for change. I think that this is happening a lot, but I'm wondering how you think about helping people reclaim the idea that privacy isn't something we should be ashamed of, that privacy is something that we should be proud of. I hear you say, and I think that's totally right, it's a pillar of an open and self-governing world. How do you help convince people about that?
Let me step back for a second. Every time, like you might have like heard this from multiple people, right? Like they complain about ads falling down or give an example. Oh, I was talking with my friend about bicycles and now all these bicycles ads are showing up. My phone is listening to me, right? Like, so I think those are the perfect moment for you to go deeper into the matter of privacy, right? Like you imagine if it was not bicycles. Imagine if it was about a government decision that you were talking about, right? Like that is a moment, right? Like you need to connect with people when they are presenting to you the problem. So it's fundamental, right? Like that makes super, super easy for someone to understand. But the next step in it is like they ask you how I protect myself. And sometimes I feel like our work at Tor is not only to create tools, but to make it easier for people to use. It needs to be friendly. It needs to be familiar, right? Like that's why the Tor browser is super nice, because it's just like any other browser. People hear about Tor and they think it's like, oh, is this hacker tool that I need to have special skills to use? No, it's just like any other browser that you open and you use, and you can use on your phone, you can use anywhere. So it is extremely important to bring awareness when people are identifying the problem, even if it is in an informal conversation or in a more global conversation, right? Like sometimes those problems arise in global news. We have multiple examples of that. Cambridge Analytica was one of it. And at those moments, we need to learn how to connect. But when we connect, we need to also be able to provide solutions that it's easy and familiar to people so they can have hope. They can look at it and they can say, okay, I can control this, right? Like I can protect myself. I can protect my privacy. Those elements come in all together, right? Like it's not a one catchphrase that will make it happen. You need to combine all those elements in the process. So it doesn't seem too hard and people feels empowered to have agency to take action.
Yep, I think that's right. So what we try to do in this podcast is kind of flip the script and think about what would the world look like if we got it all right. So what would the world look like if Tor was immensely successful? What's your vision of the world where, we get this right?
In the case of Tor, one thing would be that service and websites, they are friendly to Tor. So if a user is coming to connect to an application or to a website, that website would know it and would be friendly to it. This is one of the biggest problems right now, right? Like some websites are not friendly to Tor or solutions like Tor. So that would be number one, right?
Yep.
So if Tor is successful, we would have an internet or a world with technology, right? Like to go a little bit beyond internet, where technology is driven by sharing, by collaboration. And the model of it, it's not about the data. The business model of it it can be unique to each case of services, but would not necessarily be the typical one that is the easy one, between quotes, of let's collect all the data, either use it for advertise within our service or sell it to data brokers, and we can make some money out of it, right? Like I think that if Tor would be successful, we would have the philosophy of Tor being part of the heart of what it's building the technology worldwide.
Yeah, I think that's great. In some ways, Tor wouldn't need to exist as a separate project because the Tor values would be built into everything. And what I hear there is that also includes the way Tor has been developed, the open source, collaborative, transparent process by which tools were developed would be part of what gets baked in. It's a good vision.
Let's take a quick moment to say thank you to our sponsor. How to Fix the Internet is supported by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation's Program in Public Understanding of Science and Technology, enriching people's lives through a keener appreciation of our increasingly technological world and portraying the complex humanity of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. We also want to thank EFF members and donors. You are the reason we exist. We will talk a little later in this episode about how important funding from the community is to the work that we do. And you can become a member of EFF's community for just $25. The more members we have, the more power we have in state houses, courthouses, and on the streets. EFF has been fighting for digital rights for decades, and that fight is bigger than ever. So please, if you like what we do, go to EFF.org/pod to donate. And now back to our conversation with Isabela Fernandes and the impact that free software and the community of people making it has had on her life.
I was raised by free software. Everything I know comes from not only the software itself, but the community. So all my skills comes from it. So in the early 2000s, I joined a volunteer network called Indie Media. It was an independent news website globe-wide. I built the one for Brazil, and we did everything with free software, right? Like it was open publish websites. When I explain to people nowadays about it, like you didn't need a username or password to publish your article on that platform. And we have hundreds of those sites around the world. And I did this work for 10 years because I really believe in on democratization of information. And I saw the internet as a root of it. And I saw how powerful that was because it was the beginning of the internet in many parts of the world. Here in Brazil was just starting. Not everybody had a connection. And here we were with this powerful tool to democratize communication in Brazil. And through that experience, I was invited to work for the federal government in series of free software initiatives, being one of them, the digital inclusion. We would build solutions to communities, was a basket of solutions. And that was from online stores. They could sell their own products online to voice over IP. At the time, it was like, there was no cell phones. I'm talking about 2003, like 2004, there was no cell phones. I arrived to a community 1 month after they had power for the first time in their life. And I was bringing internet. And I'm like, okay, you have internet. What do you want? They didn't have a phone line. So I created voice over IP. I was like, you can call anywhere in Brazil with this computer, and that was aligned with 20 people right away to make phone calls.
my
But
God.
we were doing this. We were like going to the favelas in Brazil and collecting all the teenagers and say, what do you want? Or like, oh, I want to record my music. And we were recording the music on CDs using everything free software. Some communities were like, we want to document because they have a lot of folklore stories that is only oral and they wanted to document it. We created a wiki for them to document it. So education, go to public schools. We did a lot of that with free software. At the same time, why this was possible, right? Like was because of the culture that was changing. The culture was, okay, we're not gonna use proprietary software anymore. We're not gonna use the money from the country that we barely have to pay for this big, super expensive license. Instead, we're gonna use this money to invest on the people, to invest on computer science students, to invest on conventions, free software, meetups, to invest on install fast. And we start to do that. And we had like a huge technology boom in Brazil from the private sector, like I said, from the government, from universities. Everybody was collaborating. There was a lot of companies being created to provide different types of service or to maintain softwares. There was a lot of different business being generated out of it as well. So I could touch it. I can see it. It is possible. We can do it, right? Like I actually am always very excited and right now I'm seeing a movement again in Brazil. It's not too public yet, but that is a movement like this with hundreds of organizations debating and building a strategy to recreate that inside of the country. So it is possible to build better world with technology, right? Like better versions of technology for us. It's not a mission impossible thing. It is totally possible.
And it's not the distant past, really. I mean, sometimes when you talk about it, like I was alive at the time, but not, not old enough to be involved in that. And it does sometimes sound like a kind of golden era that's lost forever to people. And it's really great to hear that it's something that's cyclical or it's something that, we lost for a brief period and we can get back to. How did that movement that's happening now in Brazil get sort of reignited?
We're bringing some aspects from that time. At that time, we have Linux install fast. So you would bring your machine and you install Linux. We want to combine anytime that you have an event that you're talking about the internet, that you're talking about regulation, to have install fast. Let's install Mastodon. Let's install Signal. Let's have everybody come out of this event and open for the population, right? Like, because sometimes when you offer those options to people, they don't have a network within their option, so they don't tend to stay. But if you're doing this an event and you feel like let's install Mastodon and everybody can have the account on different Mastodon instance, but we all following each other and I'm seeing the content and I can see it for real, what that means. And I will leave the event already with a network of people that I can follow on Mastodon. Same thing. Every time I do a Signal training, I tell people, now that you all install it, let's copy each other's contacts. So we have each other on our Signal account, right? Like, so we have a community. So we are thinking about that combination.
I wonder how, again, you talk about some of this, and I feel so jealous of, being in this movement. I've never really been, an engineer, so I'm sort of looking at the free software and open source communities at a distance. How did you end up sort of getting involved in them? And do you have any advice for other people, today that want to be helpful or want to connect with other people to help build the kind of internet you're talking about?
I end up on this out of necessity. When I was a teenager, I hated school, but I loved to learn. I got kicked out of schools multiple times until my dad put me on a technical high school to learn computers. But at the same time, in my house, my parents had to work from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So, the strong survive in the house was me and my siblings. And I could not touch the computer because my old brother would not let me. So I had to write code with a pen and paper. And I hated it. And I started to go to my dad's office to connect to at night. When he would leave at 11, I would arrive and stay till 7 a.m. And that's how I started to learn about Linux. We didn't have money for a license. So the more I wanted to do with a computer, the more I had to go to free software, and like I said, after that, I joined this in the media network where we did everything. I learned how to build websites. I learned how to build data centers. We had to have security. We had to build new products for journalists because we wanted to use free software, but sometimes we didn't have everything, or the solutions we had was not good enough. So we had to improve them to edit an audio or a video, right? Like things like that. So I went through this whole phase because I would not accept the technology that the normal business model would wanted to offer me. I didn't accept that as it is, and I thought something else could happen. And every time I talk with young people, I tell them this: don't accept the technology that is being offered to you as it is. Don't accept it. It is possible. The reason we have free software was because people did not accept it, the technology as it was given to them. And I think that's the spirit.
Thank you so much, Isa, for coming and sharing your stories with us and your hope. What a hopeful conversation this was.
Thank you so much, Cindy and Jason. It was great to be here. Thank you.
Well, now I know how Tor works, which is great because I've been trying to figure that out for years. At 3 steps, I understand why there are 3. This makes a lot more sense to me. And I'm honestly just a lot more hopeful than I was, which is always nice. It doesn't happen every time, but I feel like she's describing a future that actually not only is she and the Tor folks helping to build, but that other people can be a part of too, which is great.
Yeah, I think sometimes people envision privacy tools as the domain of people who are dark and worried and wanting to be self-protective all the time. And what was so refreshing about this, and refreshing about the way Isa and Tor operate in the world, is they're working with some pretty serious issues for people, but they're hopeful. They're building a future. They're very positive, and they have a vision of what the world looks like if we build privacy and security into everything. And in some ways, it was a really light interview about something that protects people from very dangerous situations.
Yeah. And she talked a lot about, what got her into free software. For her, it was kind of the necessity of having to write code on paper and not being able to buy software. But I think we're coming to have that, for some people, that same necessity again for a lot of different reasons. The software is bloated, it's enshittified, as Corey would say. It's, often monopolied in some way. And not that these are good things, but if it gets people back to the point she made where you realize that you can build the things yourself, that you don't have to accept the software that you're given and the tech that you're given, you can make your own and edit it and things like that. I think that would be a great outcome. And it sounds like that's already happening.
I think the other pieces were just, really emphasizing the community, the need for community and how important community is, both in terms of entry into this, but also in the supporting and maintaining and developing of things, and in how people use Tor, right? The Tor project operates because of nodes all across the country that volunteer to hold, to carry other people's things. The EFF has done a Tor challenge a few times where we've tried to get more people to run nodes, whether they're in the middle or in the end, but that community is kind of infused in the way Tor works, and it's infused in the vision that she has for a better future too. And that's just so consistent with, what we've heard from people over and over again about how we fix the internet.
And that's our episode for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you have feedback or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Visit EFF.org/podcast and click on listener feedback. And while you're there, you can become a member and donate, maybe even pick up some of the merch, and just see what's happening in digital rights this week and every week. Our theme music is by Nat Keefe of Beatmower with Reed Mathis, and How to Fix the Internet is supported by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation's Program in Public Understanding of Science and Technology. We'll see you next time. I'm Jason Kelley.
And I'm Cindy Cohn.
This podcast is licensed Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International and includes the following music licensed Creative Commons Attribution 3.0, unported by its creators. Recreation by Airtone. Additional beds and alternate theme remixes by Gaetan Harris.